We are located at the table back by the exit. We've been invited here to demonstrate some of the historical databases that are available through your local library. There are some clipboards that are circulating that give you an opportunity to ask a history question, which we will try to work on getting an answer to during the lecture. If we can't get one, we will email you or call you with whatever we can come up with. And if you stop by our table, you can also learn about some of the additional library resources like our annual reading challenge and our new notary services, which are completely free but have some limited hours. So if you're interested, please stop by and we'd be happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Coming out on this beautiful spring day. Like I said, I was excited this morning when I looked at the thermometer and was in double digits and not single. And my wife's a lot happier, I guarantee that. But want to introduce our speaker today. It's kind of the subject matter is kind of wow. And that is something that needs to be discussed and helped me with. And I think it's a bigger problem than any of us really realize. Sam Preston, the interim director of public safety at USI, is a retired lieutenant from the Mandarin County Sheriff's Office with 26 years of experience. He's a master instructor in ASSIST, Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training, QPR, Question, Persuade, and Refer. This is a evidence-based suicide prevention training, and CIT, Coordinator and Crisis Negotiator. And like I said, it's a subject that need to be discussed, and looking forward to Sam's presentation. So let's welcome Sam.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hope you can hear me okay. First thing I'm going to ask, how many of you are veterans? Thank you so much for your service. I had the opportunity, the blessing to wear a uniform of a different color, working with the Sheriff's Office. But I put pride every day in putting that on and representing and serving this community. And for you that serve our country, thank you so much for what you do. A couple of things I just want to say. We are going to talk about suicide today, and that is a tough subject. If I ask for a show of hands, I know everyone in here has been affected by suicide in some degree. A friend, a family member, many of us may have had thoughts ourselves. So you're not alone. That's something that's very serious. Take care of yourself during this presentation. We're not going to delve really deep into this subject today. We're going to cover a lot of material. But do take care of yourself. This is a touchy subject. It could bring back some feelings. Be your brother's keeper. Watch out for each other. After this presentation, I'll be here for a few minutes as well. So if you want to reach out and talk to me, I'll be happy to listen. So, there'll be time after the presentation for some questions, but if you have a thought, comment that you want to make while in the middle of speaking, raise your hand and we can address it then. I sometimes think I'm going to ask a question and then 10 minutes later it slipped my mind, so feel free to do that. They introduced me as the director at USI. Today I'm representing basically the Southwest Indiana Suicide Prevention Coalition. And what that is a group of individuals representing many of the agencies here in town to address issues of suicide and work to provide programming and to provide resources for those who may be having thoughts of suicide, or who may be working with someone who may be suicidal thoughts. They can be found on Facebook. That's one way to find them. I'm going to leave some resources here when I get done that you can have and pick up and make some contact if you need to. I'll leave you my personal information as well if you want to speak to me directly, and I can try to hook you into those resources also. Some of the things that we do, I mentioned a couple of the trainings already, or was already mentioned, the assist and the QPR, and I'll describe those in depth a little bit later. Some of the events that we do, one is it's called a loss conference. What that is a 2-day retreat that's held here locally. Usually it's at the Sarto House for survivors of suicide. And I'll go ahead and define that really quickly. When people talk about suicide, words matter. And we always do a little bit of education about what we should say to someone. Sometimes we hear that phrase, someone committed suicide. That's language we try to get rid of, because if you think about the word commit, what do people commit? Crimes, sins, and felonies. So we usually try to use the language that they suicided or died by suicide instead of using commit. Other phrases. I see this on the news too, that they say someone, it was a successful suicide, or it was an unsuccessful attempt. There's no success in that. And so we really work to educate folks about using the right language. I hear the phrase, chose to kill himself. If someone is contemplating suicide, they don't see a lot of choices. And, I think you could argue that at that time that maybe that person died by suicide, they didn't see a way out. And they didn't see a choice. And I use a couple of examples of that. One is, if you think, if you look at a billboard, if I'm standing right in front of this billboard, I can't see above it, I can't see underneath it or around it. It's just in my face. And that's sometimes what that crisis is like. Or another example that I use when I think about why someone dies by suicide. Who's familiar with a vice that you would put whole pieces, two things together? If I had a vice and I asked one of you, hey, would you put your hand in here and let me tighten this up? Who's going to volunteer and say, hey, that's a good idea? Yeah. We're not going to do that, right? You're not going to purposely put your hand in there. But what if you do get stuck? What if your hand's in that vice and I crank it down a little bit? It's going to hurt, correct? If I tighten it down just a little bit more, it's going to hurt more. If you look at your hand, it's probably going to change color. It's going to get red where the blood's pooling. It's going to get white where that blood is leaving. You tighten it a little bit more, it's going to hurt a little bit more. If we keep cranking it down, you may even, you may hear tendons pop. You may hear bones break. Could that pain be so bad that the idea of cutting your hand off seems like a good idea if you couldn't get out? Absolutely. Now think about that when we're in pain mentally. Sometimes that pain feels so great that seems like the only option is ending one's life. what we do in some of the trainings, we're not going to be experts. Not all of us are clinical folks or professionals or licensed therapists. But if we can talk to someone who's in crisis, you may not be able to solve that person's problem, but if you're in that much pain, if we can loosen that just one crank, some of that pain will subside. I'm going to call that hope. If we can give someone hope, then we can save lives. And I think it's so important for us to remember to do that. So as we go through, we'll talk about that off and on again. Some of the other things that we do, the Lifesavers Walk, we do that every September. It's not a race, it's kind of a fun walk, but we do that at the grounds of the Evansville State Hospital. And it's a way to memorialize people who have died by suicide, and a lot of family members are there. If I use this term, I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit. If I use the term survivor, it goes back to kind of a definition too. You may hear when people talk about suicide, they talk about survivors. That definition, it's not someone who tried to suicide and lived through that experience. It would be a family member or a loved one that was left behind by someone who suicided. And the way I explain that is if you look at, if you read an obituary, it always says in there that this person was survived by. That's why we use that term survivor. Coalition meetings, we meet every Wednesday at the Medical Arts Center, which is on Bellmead Avenue across from Easter Seals and St. Vincent. It's an open meeting. But many of the partners that are there, all the hospitals, both private and non-private, so Deaconess, St. Vincent, Brentwood, Southwestern Behavioral are there. Many community partners, such as the Sheriff's Office, the Evansville Police Department, the Fire Department, obviously USI has a presence, and a lot of other partners who are concerned about suicide. What I wanted to look at now, especially talking to a room full of veterans, is the number of veterans that we have that die by suicide annually. There's been some strides. Some of you may be aware of the 22 program, because we saw that nationally 22 veterans had died daily by suicide. There's been a lot of work to reduce that number, but one is still too many. So we're going to work hard to try to look at the problem. What I wanted to show this problem locally is generally in Evansville, if you see statistically, we will have around 50 suicides a year in Vanderbilt County. Still way too many. But what I noticed when I was going through the data, and we're not sure with complete accuracy these numbers as far as veterans who died by suicide, but from some of the interviews that they did with family members, that we see, say, for example, in 2019, we had eight veterans in Vanderbilt County die by suicide. When I look at the numbers, what's concerning is this is about 10% in Vanderbilt County. 10% of our vets die by suicide in relationship to the population. However, only about 6% of our total population are veterans. So that number does not match, the local average. We need to do a better job. We need to take care of each other. Again, I mentioned being our brother's keeper. We need to do that. And I think some of the grassroots work that we're doing here locally has helped, but we still have to carry this charge.
I have
Yes, I have a question. Okay.
How many of those paid and died? How many of those were homeless?
That's a good question. The question, if you didn't hear, was of that number that died, how many were homeless? I don't know that answer. I could drill down and maybe be able to dig that through with some data. But I think that's a good thing to look at is the number of individuals who are without housing. Some of our individuals who may have a secondary illness or a mental illness. Those are all things that we want to take in consideration, and that's an important thing to look at. Another thing that I think we want to point out too is these are the numbers of suicides that we know about. Statistically, 10 to 20% are unknown. For example, as a deputy, I worked many one-vehicle accidents. Someone hit a tree, someone hit a bridge abutment. I don't know. I won't know if that was an intentional wreck or whether someone used that as a vehicle to kill themselves. Many of our drug overdoses, sometimes that is an accidental overdose. Sometimes that is intentional. Sometimes it's more of a just a benevolent, I don't care what happens. Those numbers aren't always included. You see in 2020 and 2018 there was, well, 2020 there was a little bit of a drop. Many suicides were listed as COVID deaths. And, one of the reasons why is, there was funding if hospitals were being reimbursed if someone had died by suicide. Had died by COVID. So if someone had died, but that was listed as them also having COVID, obviously that was counted. Other things that we don't account for is small communities may rule this as a different cause of death to help for insurance purposes, to help embarrassments to families. So we know that the number of suicides that we have in our community is much higher than reported. I've already tore up your stuff today, so so this might be the only slide that we see. Any other questions really quick about the numbers before we move on? All right. Thank you so much.
Sir, can you tell the men and women, or are they all men, or are they all women, or something?
I can break that down. In the majority of cases, yeah. Okay, the question was these numbers in terms of men versus women who died by suicide. Generally, it's probably 70-30 men dying by suicide than women. Why do you think that is? Any idea? One of the main things that we see is the method. Men tend to use more drastic means, hanging, a firearm. Women will, and again, this is generalities because I've worked way too many suicides involving different methods. Women will sometimes use like drugs or pills to overdose. And there is a chance if someone takes a handful of pills, they may have second thoughts. They may recover, or throw those meds up. So usually men will take a more permanent or more effective, and I hate to use the word effective, but a more drastic type of method. So that's usually why those numbers are a little bit different. Some of the things that we do to try to combat suicide in Vanderbilt County is we offer training to the community. We make the opportunity to do what we're now, is talking about something that we don't want to talk about. Usually, I see this. I grew up in, if you can tell, I still have a little bit of the Kentucky accent. I grew up in Webster County. And if you grew up in a small community, it's probably the same thing, is we don't want to talk about suicide. And sometimes those family members, those survivors, we don't give the attention that we should because we don't know what to say. We don't know how to act. And I've got a friend that says suicide is not a casserole death. And what he meant by that is, in a small community like where I grew up, if we had someone passed away, we usually had the funeral, and then we went to our church basement and had a meal for the family. And everyone brought a casserole and brought a covered dish in. So we could talk about that loved one. We could be there for that family member. When it's a death by suicide, we don't always do that because we don't know what to say. So it's, being able to speak in front of a group like this and just talk about things that are serious, I think it's important. And I think us to offer trainings and other opportunities to help each other is so very important. This training is one that we do. It's done a lot here in Evansville. It's called QPR. It's Question, Persuade, and Refer. I like this course because we can interject this anywhere. I have had the opportunity. I've taught this to my Sunday school class. I've taught this to inmates in the jail and everyone in between. My language is a lot different depending on which group. Probably the Sunday school class don't like the verbiage I'm using to some of my inmates, but we have to fit that crowd. It can be done really easily in about an hour. It's a basic overview of the problem of suicide and how to ask that question. Are you thinking of suicide? Because how we ask that question is also important. We have multiple instructors here in Vanderbilt County, and we probably have 40 or 50. So we're available to teach any group at any time. And again, it's a very basic overview, and it's been really effective for us. Excuse me, I'm getting a drink of water.
That sounded weird.
Are you awake now?
Sound like R2-D2.
It didn't it? Sound like R2-D2. This is free to the public. All these offerings, we try to make it free to the public. If it's some of them, there are some charges, but we try to use local grants to cover that. So, but this is a training I'm very proud of. Would be happy to teach it to any group here. We could actually, we could set up a class here maybe sometime if you wanted. If you have an organization or a group that you would like us to do this, we'd love to do it. Another course that's offered is mental health first aid. This talks about suicide a little bit, but it also talks about just mental health in general. Gives our public maybe the ability to maybe notice someone who is beginning to have a mental health crisis. And then, being aware of that, the quicker you can catch someone who's in a mental health crisis and offer them some hope, offer resources, offer help, the more successful they are in their recovery. So this is a one-day class. It also is taught multiple times per year. There's a lot of instructors that teach this. This is a program that's starting to be taught more frequently on USI's campus. There is a big push to have more mental health awareness at the college level, so we're teaching this quite a bit. Again, a really good program. Assist is another course that I teach quite a bit. It is a 2-day course. It is a high-speed, low-drag course when it comes to working with individuals who are suicidal. The public is invited to attend this course. A lot of mental health professionals also take this course because it helps them in their practice. It really digs down into not only understanding how to help someone in crisis, but kind of understanding your own feelings. And understanding yourself will help you work with someone who may be suicidal. Because we have to remember not to be judgmental. We all have our own values, our own thoughts, but we have to meet people where they are. And this is kind of jumps into a training lesson, but I'll touch on it anyway, is if we were talking to someone who is thinking about suicide, we want to be direct. We want to ask those questions out of care, but we need to ask those questions directly. We don't want to get that wrong. And sometimes that's hard because when I train people, sometimes they want to ask this question, are you thinking about hurting yourself? And if we go back to that example I gave about the vice, this person's in pain. They're thinking about making the pain go away. They're not thinking about hurting themselves because they already are hurting. So they can answer that question correctly, but we will misinterpret it. I don't want to screw that up. Also, if someone's in crisis and they're dealing with a lot of things, I don't want to say, hey, are you thinking about doing something stupid? You're not thinking about doing something stupid, are you? Well, now, not only are they in crisis, I've insulted them. I've got to build trust. So I'm going to ask questions very directly. I'm going to ask, are you thinking of suicide or are you thinking you're killing yourself? I'm going to ask those questions directly, whether it's a friend or a family member, whether it's one of our students on campus that I might have to go to their apartment and talk to. But we have to ask those direct questions coming from a position of care. Another program, again, it's really good that I'm happy with, but it's long-term training. CALM is a controlled access to lethal means. And what that is we understand that, someone might be suicidal today, but in a week they'll be fine. If we get them through that crisis. How can we keep people safe? And we do a lot about safety planning. I hear arguments, and obviously, I, as a police officer, as a country boy, I grew up with weapons all my life. I'm going to guess many of you are gun people. So, I don't like people coming in trying to take my guns. Many of you fought to keep that from happening. And I'm not going to turn this into a big gun discussion, but there's sometimes at that moment people may not need a weapon. So what do we do? And I know that through different red flag laws the government can take a gun, but who in here is a big avid gun person? Do I have many people? Okay.
The Constitution is protected us against foreign and domestic. It's not about only, it's protecting against your own government.
Absolutely.
You understand that?
I understand that. And what I would tell you too, and for example, if, you know, even though I trained a lot of our police officers, if they came in with a search warrant and took my guns, they probably wouldn't get along. Just saying. But, you know, if I'm suicidal, do I need those guns handy? No, probably not. I always try to, as a police officer, understanding that if I say I'm going to try to take your guns, I'm probably going to get a fight. But if I know you're in crisis and I can say, you know, do you have a friend that you trust? Do you have a family member you trust? Can babysit these weapons for a week? Because for me and for a lot of people, you know, we have to find healthy things to do to keep our mental health. I know a lot of people that hunt for relaxation. They target shoot for relaxation. So taking those tools away that help keep them safe and help keep them grounded is not always the right thing to do. But what calm training does is to look at options. What can we do? I had an individual who was suicidal, would not give up his guns. But a lot of suicides are impulsive. So in talking to this individual, the steps we put in place was I talked to him and I'm like, when you think of suicide, what are you normally doing? And he says, I think about it most when I drink. So what we did was we talked to him. I'm like, what keeps you safe? And he said, I love my grandkids. I don't want to hurt them. So by his liquor cabinet, we put pictures of his grandkids. So when he went to that cabinet, when he reached for that bottle, he saw a picture of his kids. He wouldn't give them his guns, but he agreed to unload them and put the ammunition in a separate room, in a separate lockbox. He agreed to field strip all his weapons. So, and in each place where that ammo, we put another picture of the kids. By his gun his gun safe, we put another picture. So in order for him to carry through with suicidal intentions, he saw 3 or 4 different moments to pause and think about what's the right thing to do. That helped keep him safe. If we're worried about someone who may overdose, you know, I'm sure some of you in here are on multiple medications. Hell, I'm on so much now, it's almost like a snack. I mean, it's like I take this whole handful, it's almost like a snack. So, and I need some of them. But if it's a medicine that could be lethal if I overdose, you know, we can work with pharmacies that they only give us like a 3-day supply. Or we can work with family members who will hold on to those meds and get just enough to maintain safety. Calm training helps to do this. Another thing that we do with calm is we introduce that to gun owners and pawn shop owners, because responsible gun people, they don't want to sell a weapon to someone who's going to use it on themselves. So we offer that training. There's actually one of the gun stores in Terre Haute. If you buy a gun, they offer you the QPR training as well. So, you know, just a tool that we have that we give to the community to, you know, to be able to be responsible with firearms, because we do know that that is the most often used tool for a suicide. Some of the resources that I've got here, I'll leave some resources out later. But here's some local ones. Deaconess Cross Point, Southwestern Behavioral. The number that you see there, actually I should have put this down better, but the 422-1100, that is Southwestern's emergency line. It is monitored 24/7 by a licensed mental health professional. It's local help. One of the things that Southwestern offers too is the ability to come out to you if necessary. They also offer some beds that are not part of a court-ordered committal. But they offer some overnight beds if someone just needs to get out of a stressful situation. Evansville Veteran Center, they offer some resources. Brentwood Springs, which is a private hospital, psychiatric hospital in Newburgh. One of the things that they do, I think is great, is they have a program that's called Help for Heroes. And that is for all military, active and retired, for all law enforcement and all fire department, active and retired. And it's a great program. Other resources, 988, which is the new suicide hotline. There is a special, if you press 1 once you dial that number, that talks to a veteran specialist. And then obviously 911, our local law enforcement. Officers in Vanderbilt County, Warwick County, they're all trained in crisis intervention, which gives them some extra skills. So these are just some of the resources that we have. I'll leave that up for just a second. If you want to take a picture of it, you can. If not, again, I'll have some resources also available. And the last two things that I want to really bring up is, I mentioned the Help for Heroes program. I've got a good friend of mine that just recently went there. He spent 3 weeks inpatient. Just recently retired after 25 years in the Army. And I called him last week and I said, hey, I'm going to do this presentation Thursday. What do you want me to tell our veterans? And he thought about it and he said, make sure they know they're not alone. That's the same thing that I've talked to my deputies and the city police officers who's going through crisis. They feel alone. What we experience is not unique. We've all in our careers have seen things, whether it's on the battlefield or whether it's on the streets. We all handle that differently. That's what makes us human. We use the phrase PTSD quite a bit. And, whether that's a diagnosis that someone gave you or it's something that we're just dealing with on our own, having a reaction to something stressful is very normal. How we navigate that, we're all going to be different, but those paths are still very much the same. And I like to look at it this way, is when we go through life, every now and then you've got a benchmark that's met. That when that crisis happens, your life will never be the same. That could be someone who's a victim of domestic violence. That could be someone who's lost a family member, who lost a child. It could be a horrific accident. It could be something that we saw in our careers. We'll never change. That being said, moving forward, that doesn't mean that things will get worse. It just means that we've changed a little bit. And I think being each other's keeper, we tend to really focus on, let's put labels on everything and everyone. I think we need to quit doing that. I mean, obviously it's important for us to know ourselves, but we don't have to live with that definition, whatever that is. That term, sometimes I say we want to quit doing the icks in this world. Meaning, you're labeled as a alcoholic, a diabetic, a drug addict. Well, those are challenges that some of us face. That doesn't define who we are. And so when I look at diagnosis, things that are given to us as, well, you're suffering from this, or you've got this diagnosis, that may be well and true, but how do we move forward from that? And it's about growth. And that's something that I went to some training on law enforcement suicides about a month ago. And the focus for law enforcement, which I think is also true for military, is we talk about post-traumatic stress, but we need to focus on post-traumatic growth. How do we grow? And let's spend more effort on getting better than just staying where we are. And before I close for questions, I just finished actually a book called Conquer Anything. The author is Greg Stubbe. Does that name ring a bell with anyone? Sergeant Stubbe was a Green Beret in Afghanistan. He was on their A-team as a medic. Also was an instructor. He wound up, they were ambushed. He took some major wounds, even a mortar round through most of his midsection, died twice. But came back. Ironically, he was a medic, but the medic that saved him was someone that he had washed out previously in training. This kid had the heart to come back through that training again, and in a neat twist of fate, actually saved Sergeant Stubbe's life. But I got to thinking about this one paragraph that he wrote that in this book that I'm like, this is a perfect way, I think, to end. It says what I want to say. So I'm going to read this that he wrote. And then, but before I do, again, thank you for what you've done. I got to wear a uniform with the sheriff's office, and I got to protect the streets, and I got to enforce the laws. And that's because you went before me and you fought for our freedoms, and then I was able to take that you did and have a great career. So, in the words of Sergeant Stubbe, my hope for veterans is that we will all remain grateful for a country worth serving and defending, and that the purpose we gain in our lives throughout that service is immeasurably valuable. We should never cease to live with the kind of honor that made us raise our hand and swear to the oath in the first place. Banish sympathy, for we are not victims. Refuse to live wounded and choose to remain warriors. Continue to serve and live forever in the words spoken by John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Thank you for what you've done for our country. Any questions?
Before we do that, I want to bring up something. When we pass the hat, it's normally to fund education. Today we're going to do the donations to any program of Sam's choice. So keep that in mind and be generous. Thank you. Now we're open for questions.
I was surprised that you didn't have some numbers on drug and alcohol abuse as it pertains to the number of suicides in Vanderbilt County? Got any idea on that? Is it a majority, a minority, 50-50, less? I don't know.
Generally, what we've seen is alcohol is generally present, and I think what that does is we look at a triangle of lethality, what causes something, and three things are generally present: access to a weapon, drug or alcohol, and a crisis itself. What we try to do is, how can we knock that triangle down? If we take one of those legs away, it will fall. If we can remove the weapon, that's the safest thing. But we also, the drug and alcohol, that will make bad decisions worse. But we do see that presence quite a bit. And we also know that sometimes, again, we've got to balance that, because someone, if they are alcoholic, we can't tell them to quit drinking, because then they will go into DTs, but we can work on reducing that consumption, again, follow up with getting help. Okay. That's great. We got a lot of questions. I'm going to go this way and you go across. That's easier for the guy with the mic.
Okay, I've been acquainted with 2 suicides in the family, and I can truthfully say that neither one of them, the family had no clue that it was coming. I mean, it caught us so flat-footed, we just flat couldn't believe it. And 2 questions, I guess. Well, first of all, a program like this, I don't think we're programmed to recognize suicide. That's my personal opinion. We don't think those terms. But secondly, is there any trigger points that we should be looking for that might help us recognize what's coming?
Okay. One of the things that we see is, as family members, sometimes we're so close, we don't see things. And one of the things I think is important to understand is we are not responsible. I've lost loved ones, coworkers, and I'm always going back going, what did I miss? We're not responsible for what we're not responsible for. Also, quite often our family members are really good about hiding that from us. But things that we can look for is anything that's different from that baseline, if you know someone. If you know someone who maybe they're very religious and they turn away, that could be a sign. If someone who's not religious and they turn toward religion, that's always a sign. I get this question a lot, is what if someone asks me, will God forgive me if I kill myself? My answer to that is, are you thinking about killing yourself? Because I'm a person of faith, but I cannot match Scripture with anyone. And again, I have my faith values, and I'm a believer, but I'm not going to be able to debate Scripture with someone. Other changes we need to see. You might see that disheveled look, that I don't care anymore. I'm not bathing like I normally did. I'm not worried about my appearance like I should. Other changes you might see, and again, part of it makes sense. Like myself and my wife right now, we are redoing our wills and we're changing our insurance, and that's because we're in that time of the life that we need to with our kids and their ages. But if that's just a random thing that you see, a big insurance policy change, that's a behavioral sign to maybe look at. But anything that's different, and I found this out. I have never pissed anyone off by asking them about themselves. And I'm very open about doing that, hey, what you're telling me, if you experience something bad, you know, what you're telling me is rough, and a lot of people in that situation have thought about suicide. Are you thinking of suicide? And if they are, they'll usually be forthcoming, or you'll see that behavioral change that you know that you've hit a spot. But if they say, no, I'm not thinking about nothing like that, my response is, you know what, I'm glad that you're safe, but I want you to know if you're ever in a time of crisis, you can reach out to me. So a lot of the behavior clues are this, that, change. Does anyone have friends that are always in a crappy mood? I mean, that's their baseline, right?
Every day?
They are always, there's probably a name that popped in your head. It's someone that they're always just, but what if they show up the next day and they're happy? That behavior is completely different. I'm not going to say, man, you're in a great mood, are you thinking of suicide? But I might go, hey, I've noticed that, you seem happy. What's going on? What has changed? Because you might have someone who's thinking about suicide, and they've come to a conclusion that they're going to follow through with that. And there's a little bit of a peace because they want to do that. And so, that's a change too. Any behavior change. Other questions?
The question I have is about high school. Are the social workers and the counselors completely into a program such as this?
Absolutely. The assist class I talked about, every year we do a 2-day assist class exclusively for educators. QPR is a class, it's one of two that every EVSC, well, actually statewide, every teacher has to go through suicide awareness training every 3 years. And that's so important because, our kids right now, with all the stressors they have, I know for the most part, I was a pretty good kid, but when I did stupid stuff, the people that knew about it was usually like the 2 other guys that were with me. Now, it's on social media. So if I did something stupid now, the whole world would know. So the pressures that our kids have now are so much different than when I saw. So, but yes, school corporation does a great job. Many of their social workers are instructors as well. And I love teaching with them because we get to, we all have our little niches that we're good at. And so I love talking with them because I learn stuff every day.
Yeah, my question is for the survivor families that I think the organization tries to help. How do you find out about them? Do they have to reach out to you, or?
One of the things that's great for Vanderbilt County and actually Ward County is we have what's called a HOPE team. And it stands for helping other people every day. So if we were to have a suicide in Vanderbilt County, that whole team will be notified as soon as either law enforcement or the coroner's office gets there. And the folks that will come out are actually survivors themselves. And to be quite frank, usually that family members in such shock or numb. So the whole team members can help them navigate that process a little bit. But we found out what's impactful is maybe 2 or 3 weeks later is they'll make that secondary contact and reach out. So, but questions about the whole team, we can. The Suicide Coalition, there's information that you can reach out to the Facebook page. You can reach out to me, and we can make connections. But the fact that we're able to send HOPE team members at this time of a suicide is I think it really starts that recovery process. From the law enforcement standpoint, it's actually helpful for us because we have to respond very clinically. We have to process this as a crime scene, just in case. We have a job to do, And sometimes we are not in that position at that moment to provide that support or the compassion that needs to be there. And those HOPE team members, when they're there, they can help us by being that advocate for that survivor, and also allows us to do the job that we have to do. That's a great question.
If I may, I'm Don Johnson. Sam, thank you. Great presentation. Question first, short answer. Is an organization called Point Man involved in your program in any way? Are you aware of them?
I am aware of them, and we have, we're a supporter of Point Man. We haven't really collaborated, but we are, yes.
Second thing, we were talking about school and the youth. You may not know it, but in Indiana, youth suicide is the second most cause of death. Riley Hospital in Indianapolis has recently created a program to address that. There was a big gathering at Bowie's a few months ago. It's a big deal. The local Kiwanis group is holding a walk on February the 24th to raise money that will go to Riley specifically for youth mental health programs. Last year, Kiwanis raised $47,000. This year, we want to raise more. So if we catch them young, then maybe they won't grow up to have those mental problems. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sam, along that line, are you doing any work with Youth First?
The question was, are we doing any work with Youth First? Yes, most of their social workers are, they also sit on the committee, but many of them are instructors. I teach with them on a regular basis.
And for people who don't know, Youth First, their goal is to have a trained social person in every school in Vanderburgh County. Warwick County is working on it, and some of the other counties. So that's why I asked the question, and especially if we talk about teenage suicide.
Laura Keys from Youth First.
Yes.
Laura and I teach together quite a bit.
Laura made a big impact on my daughters, so.
Good. Thank you.
Sam, I've got a question here. Actually, I got two questions here. Number one, 53 suicides in 2023. How many of those were teenagers? And are we seeing an increase or decrease with teenagers with suicide?
I should have brought the complete list. I pulled the highlights out. Off the top of my head, I'm going to give you a guess. And teenagers, 2 or 3 in that group. That's usually what we have. I mean, our concerns are, you know, we are seeing suicides at a younger age, and that's, you know, actually in our extremes. At our older age, we're seeing more suicides, and at our younger age, I think just the pressures on our younger kids, again, that the media influence, I think that's the thing. With our older generation, obviously we're living longer, more medical concerns. You know, we just need to provide more support.
I just want to say thank you for what you do. I was depression and suicidal. Took it to the good Lord and got rid of that demon. Here, my wife wants to ask you a question.
Okay, you were saying about what building that you meet the first Wednesday of the month, but you didn't tell us, how do we know where the room is?
All right.
I mean, I thought.
If you go in the medical arts center, if you just go in the main entrance, there's signs that will direct you. It's noon. 12 o'clock.
Sam, excellent presentation. Hey, I want to know too, I'd like to know, there's 2 topics. One, all these electronics. Every time I see a kid, they're even in the sauna with a phone. And that image that they're portraying is false. Nobody can ever live up to what they're portraying on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and then we're using this in our school systems. With pornography, no wonder the kids are mentally
going on. Do you find that in your profession? Do you see that? Like, hey, let's take a break. There's more to life than a cell phone and a laptop.
That is, I hear this quite a bit. This generation doesn't know how to communicate. But that's what my parents said about me and their grandparents said about them. Their learning is totally different than what we have. Their social networking is different. My son's a senior at USI, and the idea of actually like calling and talking to someone on the phone terrifies. He'll text all day, and then doing something like this, no way. Now, he would have no problem presenting to 500,000 people online. It's just a different thing. It is problematic. I mean, from a parenting standpoint, how do you regulate, and police, we see at USI, we see a lot of problems in dating because they meet online on one of the dating sites, and the difference is they don't know who, again, that image that's portrayed may not be that person they're seeing. Most of us in here, I look at our ages, when we dated, it was someone that we met face to face or knew from a friend of a friend, and there was some vetting that happened, some screening. My friends maybe would have told me, don't go out with her because she's crazy. And I may not have listened, but at least they told me that. And you women there, you gossip about all the guys too, and you vetted your friends before they went out with someone. We don't have that now. So yeah, I mean the social media, it has changed, and we're nowhere near where we are being caught up with what we need to be.
Sam, second question. When you talk about stigma, when we use the word, that gentleman has a mental health problem, that scares a lot of people away from being labeled when really it's an emotional problem that went in mentally, but it wasn't a mental health problem. And how do you decide that line where it's a mental health problem, but it's really an emotional problem? Because I don't think there's anybody in this room that has one time in their life, if they're honest, of course you got to get honesty here, that didn't say they wanted to die at one time or another, but never had the intentions of committing suicide, but they felt like dying, if they're truthful.
Absolutely. I think for us, again, I've said this phrase maybe 2 or 3 times already. We've got to be our brother's keeper. If you put a stigma on mental illness, and you said it's them or us, the only thing that differentiates someone who's mentally ill or not is intensity, frequency, and duration. We all are mentally ill. We are all broken. I mean, that's what unites us. Regardless of who we are, our differences are not that broad. And so, but I think what we have to do again is when we recognize a change in someone's behavior, change in their emotional makeup, to address that issue. What's going on? It could be for the good, it could be for the bad. Nothing, because where we are different is what causes a trigger, what causes us to be upset about something. I've got vets here, so I can be a little more graphic, but as a deputy, and especially as a supervisor over the years, I've been to over 200 suicides in my career. I don't unsee those, but could I go there and I can go there and eat a sandwich and go about my job? The first time it really affected me, something like that, was I actually was just looking at some photos in our office of it was a young young person who had passed away. Unfortunately, they had cancer at a young age. They were about the same age as my daughter. And when I was flipping through, that child had the same bedspread that my kid did. It wasn't the graphic, gross, horrible things that put me out of kilter for a while. It was that little connection there. We all have a cup that we pour stress into. You know, it could be work, it could be family, all the above. And that cup can get full at any time because we don't know how much is being poured in at any given moment. So what we have to do is find little ways to empty that cup from now and then. That could be working out, that could be a better diet, that could be relationships with like-minded individuals. I think this is good therapy. Most of you share a similar passion. You know, you did raise that right hand. So that networking is part of being healthy. But stigma, one of the things that we've been encouraging, working with law enforcement officers, and peer support is so important.
Okay.
The vet will only talk to another vet.
Okay, sorry. 2 more questions right here.
Hi. I have a question and then an observation. Is there any documentation or data as far as someone that may be considering suicide? Would a pet or service animal help in that situation? And then what my observation is, and you're right about today's kids, but also I read this one article about this one group that they found some writings on the wall, and this is a true story, and they were talking about how the kids nowadays, they don't honor religion, they don't honor their parents, and they're just useless, and they'll never grow up to be anything, and our country will go to hell. Well, actually, this was written inside the pyramids about 2,000 years before Egypt became to the pinnacle of what it was at one time. And also, speaking about my generation, we had television, that's going to rot your brain. We have rock and roll. We're all going to go to hell for rock and roll. But you know, each generation, in my opinion, rise up to meet what they need to do. And it is a concern, you're absolutely right. But in this great country of America, I think we'll need whatever we need to do, even with the children of today. That's my comment.
Just the quick answer to that question. Yes, emotional support animals have been seen to be very effective. We have a lot of them on campus. A lot of our students have emotional support animals. Really, what grounds you to life, and that's individual. Any positive step that you can take, whether it's a support animal, whether it's listening to music, working out, finding those little things that make you happy, that's the key.
Yeah, my question is, how do you balance confidentiality with safety? Somebody comes up to me, this is a trusted person who says, I'm having thoughts of suicide, maybe I have a plan. I trust you. You are the only one who I trust. You cannot tell anyone it will put my job in danger. I'm ashamed. And yet you know that this person is in danger. And you know if you are their one link. So at that point, how do you balance?
A couple of things. Let me put the liability side of it. If you work out an agency and you have an agency policy that instructs you what to do, I would always say you have to follow your agency policy. If it is on a personal level, work really hard to hook more people in. We have to provide a netting for someone. So maybe they're telling you you are my only person. Keep digging. Is there a sister? Is there an aunt? Is there another trusted friend? Primary care physician. Have they been to the doctor lately? Will you talk to your doctor about this? That's another safe avenue. And I've always said this, like, we need to build a net to keep people safe. And if you're my only connection, that's not a net, that's a tightrope. So find and cultivate other people. The crisis lines that we mentioned, those can be part of that safety plan too. Who can, maybe you're the only person, but at 3 in the morning, 988 could be a second option. So, work hard to build those because, and obviously that's another thing I can say. I'm not always going to be here 24/7 to answer your phone call. So let's find, who can we find? Who can we call? Does that help?
Math was never my strong subject. We have one more question.
I have a friend close friend, who attempted suicide twice, and he's still surviving. And his family asked me, what can we do? And I said, there's not much you can do, just love him, number one. And number two, don't get involved in his problem, get involved in his solutions.
Amen.
He's improved vastly. It was a drug issue and lots of stress. There is a book by Monty Roberts. It's called the Real Horse Whisperer. Roberts did what he called gentling horses instead of breaking them. And he found after speaking multiple times that there were always women in the back of the room who would just break down and cry. And what it was about was that's the way their husbands were treating them, trying to break them instead of gentling them. And it is a very powerful read just for one-to-one, and it's also a very powerful read to explain that all these are social issues, societal issues, not personal issues. They become personal when we buy into them. And so we remove the stigma of helping someone not buy into this crap.
Great commentary. I think you said, I don't even know I have an answer. I think everything you said is right. We've got to take care of one another and focus on the individuals. You gotta love them. That's it. We've often forgotten now to show grace. And that's when it's all possible, try to show grace.
Sam, thank you very much for a very informative program. And a subject that we normally don't want to talk about. Again, thank you. One more piece of business. Our next speaker is Bill Willis. We're going to just talk about the Battle of the Bulge. He owned a radio station in French Lick for 50 years and retired from the military in 06. And it should be a good